If you're trying to be top of your game, it's performance. I want us to think more like a sports team. Training in, training out, day in, day out. If you make the cut, great. If you don't, no offense, but you're out.
Well, guys, Alex Fedotoff here, and today I have an amazing guest, friend, Andrew Payne.
For having me, Alex. Yeah, it was just about 3 years ago that I joined your program and came down to Miami and met a lot of the guys involved. And that first year was a huge roller coaster, but yeah, huge growth since then as well.
I know before e-commerce, you were in other lines of business.
Yeah, I was originally got into affiliate marketing in 2005. Did that for several years and then kind of transitioned to more of an agency where I was providing services, digital marketing and website development, things of that nature. Did that for several years, but it wasn't really my passion. And so I started to go back into affiliate marketing, had a couple really strong wins there, took a small hiatus of about 9 months and was trying to determine my next step, something I could put more effort into long term. And I ended up settling on e-commerce because it fit my skill set. I already had a strong marketing background and I understood the space. And then so when I made that decision, my next step was, okay, what are resources that I know from trusted people that I could start to network more in that space, and you were one of the first ones that came to mind. It's been a wild ride and lots of lessons along the way. The first year, so in the first 3 months of getting in e-commerce, I crossed $1 million in sales. So that happened really, really quick.
Why though? Like was it the product? Was it like your marketing skills from the previous experience?
Yeah, great question. So a big part of it was coming from an affiliate and a marketing background. I kind of stuck close to what I knew was working on the affiliate side. So I did a bunch of research, found a handful of products that were out there already in the market. And that's kind of where I started. I replicated some of what was working. And one thing in particular just was working better than the rest. And so that's where I put my emphasis on that first period of time. And that allowed me to get momentum right away. Whereas a lot of times people are focusing on testing any random idea and don't really know what works about it. So they're trying to like start from scratch, and that's a hard challenge to do versus, modeling it after something that's already out there.
So your product, you basically like model someone else who has already been doing well?
Yeah, when I stumbled upon this, it was in January of 2021. And so it was after the holiday season, but I could look and do some research and see that, okay, this particular brand had been around for just over a year. They were still running ads. So my thought process was, they've been selling for a while. It wasn't just like, a weekend thing kind of a thing set up. And so right away, just from my experience, I recognized several areas that I was confident I could do better than what they were doing, specifically on the marketing side, because I had very minimal experience on the back end side, right, when it comes to fulfillment and stuff. But on the marketing side, I was very confident that I could beat them. So that's where I started. I got a similar product, replicated a similar type of funnel, didn't copy them directly, but did a lot of replication. And I was just drop shipping to kind of test the waters at that time. And then that quickly changed to, okay, how do I increase my margins? How do we get, more profitability to sustain CPAs? The one lesson I learned, that I didn't recognize till way later with that period was I jumped onto a seasonal product basically at the end of the season. So I was fighting a downhill battle at that point, but I was still able to make it work, which was interesting. One of my first 3 video ads, I created everything. It did went on to do about 8 million in views. But that was like one of the first videos that took off really quickly in the beginning, and I rode that for quite some time along with others, but that was like the primary. But yeah, ultimately I ran into, just an ever increasing CPA for that year. And then not long after that was the iOS 14, which kind of broke everything on Facebook for a while, but I was facing all of that at that same time. Yeah. Just to clarify, if you're just going to directly copy something that's out there, you're basically shooting yourself right then. Because if you're just copying one-to-one, that person that you're copying has way more advantage than you do. You'll never get very far. You might have a short-term win, but it's gone. So you need to know that, replicating a similar approach, because something about that approach is working, but you need to have something in mind. Okay, how can I improve upon that if this actually is working when I test it? Like, How do you reduce costs? How do you get better at marketing? Maybe you improve your way you upsell things. You have to have some strategic advantage. It could be something as simple as, okay, they're only running on Facebook. Why don't I try to take this product and flow and try it on YouTube? Just a change like that, because what I've also learned is that it takes a lot of work to run on multiple channels, and it takes a lot of work to run multiple products. So if you take something working one place, sometimes it's as easy as just moving to a different place where there is minimal competition or less competition.
Yeah, the same principle also applies, I think, for people listening in from other countries. Let's say they live in Europe, in Germany, Sweden. There's many different markets where you can take products, let's say, from like US market and just pretty much replicate. I know many people that have replicated. They took, let's say, supplements or some other offers like gadgets that work in US market, translated everything, let's say, in German, and pretty much they're making.
And that's what I mean. That could be your advantage. If you live in Germany and you understand the German market, the German language, for someone like myself that lives in the US, like, it's not that I couldn't do it, right? But it might be your advantage because, one, there's a lot less competition. But secondly, your way of executing it would be much easier because you're just essentially, you're in the market, so you know the market, right? So for me, translations and stuff, like, we'd have to get it proofread. There's like a whole list of things that I don't even know if we're doing it right in the beginning, but you would know. So those could be advantages in and of themselves, and that's kind of what I mean. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to either find an opportunity gap and then do something about that process better. From my perspective, the biggest challenge I see from guys that are doing 6 figures or maybe low 7 figures and they can't really break the barrier, they lack focus, because I've learned the more I focus, the better and bigger our performance gets. The other part was basically it's processes a lot of times as well. Like, there's one guy in particular. I actually met him through your circle originally. And we used to have kind of this tit for tat back and forth, like who's going to have the biggest day of sales, et cetera, et cetera. He recently caved and bowed down to me, unfortunately for him, but just kind of a fun thing back and forth. And I told him before, I said, look, you're kind of capping out because you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this. You need to centralize your focus. Maybe this is not the right opportunity for you, but there's another opportunity that if you just focus, you'll be able to go much further. A lot of times guys get to $2, $3, $4 million and they think that doing the same thing they've been doing will take them to the next step.
Give me an example.
An example is, okay, we're just going to run Facebook ads. Let's run Facebook ads. Let's launch more ads. Let's do this, a new funnel, test this, new product. And then everything just either plateaus or starts to crumble. And the issue is because, like, they don't understand the mechanics. They found something that's working on an easy level, but how do you dive deeper into not your marketing and your product and your funnel, but it's more the business level? This is where a lot of people fail. They learn marketing and they forget business, because on the business side, you have constantly increasing costs. You have to constantly deal with competitors. So if you're only focused on marketing, everything else loses your advantage that you had. So you have to constantly review how to reduce expenses, how can you improve margins, how can you get more efficient with your marketing spend, how can you increase lifetime values, like all these kind of components. How do you improve the experience? How do you save even $1 on shipping sometimes? At certain scales, it becomes a value to think about. But a lot of guys, they get to that low 7-figure range and they're either drop shipping or transitioning from drop shipping, but they didn't do their homework. They'll jump into a 3PL, but they should have researched maybe 30 3PLs.
Oh, wow.
So you can understand what's the right fit for you and why. Think logically about it. Like, did you get a 3PL that's on the East Coast? If so, then your shipping way is too expensive on the West Coast. Whereas in my case, we got a 3PL Central US, so it's pretty even disbursement throughout both sides of the country as well as central. And so those kind of factors, like, no one thinks about in the beginning, but you need to think that way after you get to a certain level. Otherwise, you'll never grow. It used to not matter to me either until you start selling 3, 4, 5, 600,000 individual units per year, or orders per year, for example. So $1 becomes $600,000 that you save. In profit,
additional profit.
In profit, or an ability to sustain ongoing increases in CPA. Wow. So it depends on how you look at it or how your business needs it. And that's where a lot of guys forget. And like, you think about, we scaled to 2 million, great, right? But to get to the next step, it's not just like a big jump a lot of times. It's little piece, little piece, little piece. It's like laying a brick to build the wall. And eventually the wall is big because every little brick you solve, whether it be optimizing your fulfillment, your team, X, Y, Z, that's how you build something bigger.
A lot of people also strike gold in a way where, they test products and then suddenly one of the products goes and, makes them like hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. And they think that, as you said, that just continue testing new products and maybe one of them hits, right? And they kind of like get on this cycle of like testing products, or just need to hit it like a winner ad, right? And I'll continue riding the circle where, let's say you already have some momentum with business. Now you have some capital. Right now you have to focus more kind of like how to make your business like well-rounded, right? How to bring some good people on board to compensate for your deficiencies, for the things that you don't know, for things that you're not good at, which we'll talk about in a second. And just start thinking about this as a business. If you want to ever take your business to 8 figures, multiple 8 figures.
And it compounds, this goes back to what I said earlier, it compounds if you're not focused. If you're trying to run 3 little brands and you have 5 or 6 different products and you're dealing with X amount of cash, your cash flow problems become a major bottleneck. It means you could scale the most profitable product, but your money's tied up everywhere instead of focused on the most profitable product. And that kind of thing people don't think about a lot of times. And you're right, like really wasn't up until this year did cash flow become a huge challenge. And more specifically, the last few months because of Q4, because we had to prepare for that. Prior to that, like cash flow was less of an issue and it was more about not having enough inventory in the time frame that we really wanted it, because it's just the way our sales happen sometimes so suddenly. But this year it has become, and for a lot of people, cash flow is a challenge. In our situation, I have a partner. He's not involved in day-to-day, but he's essentially an additional financial arm. So he helps adding cash on specific key moments. And we started with a certain amount of cash the first year, strictly for inventory, because our inventory cycle is 30 to 40 day production. And then there's, approximately 30 days for shipping. So there's like a 2-month cycle that before we even receive inventory, right? And that becomes very cash heavy, especially when you start to prepare and plan for Q4. But in this case, what did it do for us? When we started to make larger inventory purchases with the capital, we were able to negotiate better product pricing. We were able to also plan and to shop around our freight forwarding and get lower costs there. So now say we buy 300,000 units, but we saved $1.50 per unit from the way we optimize things, right? So that's $450,000 that we saved that now can be either more profit or just help you to sustain scalability as you continue to grow. And it's hard to figure that out in the beginning because I'll be honest and say I did not have a clear strategy the first year. I was learning everything. My main goal was driving sales. If I can get sales going, great. The next step was, how do I have consistent sales, right? So once you have consistency, then you can improve. But if you're just having like, oh, this month I did 300K, next month I did 75K, next month is 200K, like really inconsistent, it's hard to plan, to reinvest, to figure things out and to improve. But once you figure out how to sell one product over and over and over and over and over, that's where things start to get interesting, because you can start to say, okay, how do I improve? How do I improve 5% here? How do I improve 5% there? And that's where you start to compound those lessons and those kind of tests that you do. And something I do more than even a lot of my peers that I interact with is I will evaluate all the time and kind of split test even different services. Like that first year, I split tested 2 3PLs. I picked one that I felt very confident about and that was reliable for scale, but they were more mid-range price. So I didn't go through budgeting, like low budget type. And then the second type I went was more of like a larger fulfillment center where it kind of gave you this Amazon...
Like ShipBob?
Not ShipBob indirectly, but similar to that, where they don't own majority of their warehouses. They do outsourcing for those. So there's lower quality control. But their cost savings that they predicted would have been worth it depending upon how high the error rate was. And their error rate was quite high, so it didn't end up being worth it for me. If you had a cheaper product, maybe it would work. But in my case, I split tested them, right? Because if they had worked, it would have been a huge advantage for me in terms of cost. But unfortunately, I lost money on that.
Very good lesson here as well, like split test your vendors, service providers, don't feel attached or obligated. Let's say you work with someone and they didn't bring you the results that you want, like you have to challenge them. We do the same, like we question, because as let's say you're paying for their services, there's always some people that might be like more hungrier than them, right? That will try harder, that you can like just split tasks and see how they compare in terms of the performance.
This is maybe like a lesson learned too, but a lot of guys I know, they trust that their shipping agent in China or their manufacturer in China is giving them the absolute best possible pricing. And I can tell you right now, so far as like 98% of the time, they are not. So you might, they might tell you, you might ask them 10 times, but there are so many middlemen in China, and they all mark it up 5-10%. Like, it's one of the easiest ways to save money when you get to just a mid-size, not even high volume of sales. Just get a little bit more than the basics, and you need to revisit
How much would you
right
say,
away.
like a few thousand orders per month, something like that?
If you're selling if you're selling a couple thousand units per month or whatever it is you're selling, unless it's like, a 50-cent item or something, that's different. But if it's like a $3, $4, $5 item and you're selling 3,000 of those a month, you need to evaluate it right away, because even a 10% savings is great. But the point is, at that size of a product example, you won't see the huge benefit until you're doing much more volume. But like in my case, initially when I went direct to my manufacturer, we were paying like $19.
Wow.
We've gotten it since then. This is the year one. Since then, we're like sub $13.
Wow.
So a huge range. But we went from shipping agent to direct to manufacturer, to negotiating with the manufacturer, to increasing our order sizes, and negotiating again. I've negotiated with the manufacturer almost every time I order from them. Even if they say, there's only so far we can go down, I don't care. I want a lower price. It's basically you ask and you push, because at the end of the day, they want your order. So you have to be strategic about the negotiations at some stage. But I flew to China directly and negotiated a big portion
I remember.
of this.
Wow,
yeah,
that's crazy.
And it saved me and earned me a lot of money because of that step. We actually did that step this year in March, is when I flew to China. And just that step there saved me 23% of my product costs. The way I advise my team on how we should be, and this is more of the philosophy of how I take things, is in business, you need to be fair but firm. Like you don't have to cheat them. You don't have to be, try to only think about yourself, because there is two sides to the equation. So I always like to be fair but firm. And the many people tend to be a bit greedy. So you need to recognize when that is, and that's where you need to be firm. Not necessarily disrespectful, but like we've had a lot of negotiations, not only with our core manufacturers, but many others as well. Since then, we've taken another advantage, and we've hired someone from China to work on our team directly. I would be careful of doing that, but I think there's a huge advantage there if you're able to find the right person where there's complete transparency and trust. Because I've learned so many stories and how the Chinese like to do business and on the manufacturing side and other shipping agents, that it's certainly taking advantage of a lot of, especially drop shippers, for sure.
So your core competency, right? Your core gift is marketing. That's what you came into, like e-commerce with. You already had some background with affiliate marketing, so you already came with that strength. At what point did you realize that, let's say, operations backend is your weakness, and you started proactively hiring for that, for your second for your hand, right? Like for your right hand person that is currently your COO.
Sure, yeah. The first year, as soon as I had sales starting to increase, the first hire I had was a customer service agent. And then after that, I knew that we would need some type of operational support. I needed a right-hand person. I knew that there was a lot of various things happening. So it wasn't like I could hire just one person to handle phone, one person to handle this, one person to handle that. Like, we just had a variety of things, but we didn't have that much sales yet to support everything. So I hired an operations manager. She wasn't really the right qualified, most experienced person, but she started to help. And then we expanded the support team a little bit and got a few other members on the team. And then later that year, I was here in Miami at one of your events, actually, and I went out in the balcony and took an interview with who is now my marketing manager. She's been with us since that time, actually. She's still here. And that was really to kind of help me manage the marketing team because we started to grow. So by the end of the first year, it was 7 people. But really what I realized over that first year was that I didn't hire very good for the most part. There was one good hire, but I didn't hire very good for the most part. And the other part is once I hired them, I didn't have anything structured for them to do because we didn't have the processes built out. So when you hire people, if they don't know what to do and they can't follow it, how are you going to expect them to get things done? And then you blame them for doing a bad job when in reality, you did the bad job. I know it's those hard lessons you learn about yourself sometimes.
But it requires like the reflection, right? And
yes,
just putting your like ego aside. Obviously, sometimes you want to blame other people, as you said, right? Like, okay, yeah, this person did a poor job, or like, they're maybe not smart, or whatever. And it's hard for a lot of people like realize that they might be the source of that problem in the first place, and they have to address themselves first. You just have to reflect, kind of disattach yourself from the business, which also we'll discuss how you do that.
And I think, as an entrepreneur, someone that wants to build a business or, generate income even, you kind of have to build up motivation and this like confidence and cockiness in you before maybe it actually always follows through, right? You have to have it, and then eventually it comes and catches up to you. And so in the beginning, you think, oh, I can learn marketing. I'm good at this. I'm good at that, right? I'm a good business person. I'm going to figure it out. But then you realize, oh, I suck at hiring. I suck at processes. I can't plan or structure. I don't have patience. Like, you learn all of these things. And those are all the things that you need to hire someone else who's good in those areas for. So the beginning of year 2 was really transformational for me because we did $5 million the first year, but we had a small loss. We had actually a significant loss going into Q4, but then we recovered and ended the year with a small loss. But I knew that over the course of that year, I did a lot of testing, a lot of A/B testing of not only our marketing stuff, but also, like I mentioned, the 3PLs and et cetera. So I just was trying to figure as much out year 1 to cut the fat in year 2. One of the main lessons I learned was that we still had basically zero operational strength. A lot of it was falling on my shoulders, and that Q4 was quite stressful because I was juggling way too much. So at the start of the second year, 2022, I went on a mission to find someone else who had much more experience in operations, and I ended up hiring someone to replace my operations manager, and I later made her my COO. And night and day difference, like huge. Like, she basically stepped in, audited our entire business and everything we were doing, and gave me a report card, basically. I hadn't had an F since probably, actually I don't think I've ever had an F, but haven't had a C minus ever in a long time. But she gave me pretty much an F on a large part of what we were doing. It was a whole thing that she had marked color in green, yellow, and red. A good chunk of it, like 80% of it, was marked red, either incomplete, not started, or completely wrong, basically. And it was interesting because it gave me a different perspective of how an operations person views our business and what we're doing. And so basically, between her and I, she made a plan, and then we reviewed it, modified it on how to fix things and where to start. And she got to it right away. And, it took about 3 months for us to really start to feeling the momentum of things. But one of the first things she fixed was she leveled up our hiring process right away. And that's really important for us because it helped us get better people, even though we didn't hire an HR manager or anything at that time. It was just her managing that part. But we started getting better people right away, and you could start seeing a big difference when you start doing that. And then she was able to support them into building out systems and kind of SOPs and things for these members to follow day to day. Really helped align things pretty quickly.
Nice. So for people listening, maybe there are people listening that are decent marketers. Maybe they're great marketers. They know how to get momentum with the business. Maybe they got the business already to like 6-7 figures. Who did you look for back then, and also now as you have more experience, would that criteria for that person change knowing what you know now, or would that be the same as it was like years
for
ago?
The operations role in specific? Yeah. The criteria would be the same. I think the only difference now that I have more experience is I'm able to more easily recognize who knows their stuff and who doesn't. That's the clear thing I think that's come through all this. In my case, I found a really great fit. I was particularly looking for someone that was very strong operationally, had like a 75% operational background, but I was also looking for someone that had an understanding of e-commerce already, at least had been exposed to it, just to shorten the learning curve, because it can be learned, but you can save a month or 6 weeks or whatever to get them up to speed. But at the end of the day, every business model is a little bit unique to how you run it, right? So they're going to have to learn a component of it anyways. But I didn't want to teach them the ABCs of how our customer support processes were at that time, right? They should be able to step in and figure out and how to improve it. One of the biggest lessons I've learned in hiring in general, and I've kind of continually kind of changed it, but something even Alex Hermosi says that I've kind of adopted more recently was I used to say, if I hire someone and I don't learn something from them in the first week, then I hired the wrong person. But Alex Hermosi says, if you have an interview with them and you don't learn something from them in that interview, you have the wrong person.
Wow.
And I've adopted it too, because now at the size we're at, I can't afford even a week of loss of hiring the wrong person in the process it takes to get to that stage. So we're at the point now where we don't need just this level of people. We need people that can really take us to the next step, which means I need to know right away that they know something I don't know. And that's the only way that we consider that person for that position. Now, this is not for all levels, but this is mainly for your manager levels and above kind of a thing. Yeah.
Wow. And also, I mean, there is an element too where, let's say, some people that have taken your team to this level, they might not be the best people to take you to the next level.
Yeah, 100% not, because I forget who it was I was watching more recently, but he was essentially sharing that he's from a larger corporation, just can't recall which, that every year they essentially review and evaluate axing the bottom 30%, especially in our case, because we're growing over 300% year over year last couple of years. Most people cannot grow that fast. And then the reality is you need your people to grow faster than that so they can stay ahead of where the company is growing. Otherwise, you're never growing. You're going to cap out. You'll hit the ceiling. And I was really struggling with that the first 2 years. We are struggling with it a little bit this year, but it's a lot less of a pain point than the last 2 years, both because we've hired better and we have more people and more structure than the first 2 years. But it's really important, because how do you grow and improve? It's always fixing your weakest links, the areas that you're lagging behind in. Like, where is the biggest opportunity for improvement? It's the things that are the furthest behind, and that even applies to your staff.
I think I read the book Michael Dell. They were running a company like about $1 billion in revenue, and they also felt stagnant, right? So even at those levels, right, the people that we were like, oh wow, even if it's like painful, even if it's like, you like those people, those people might be your best friends, and you've spent so much time together building stuff, but those people, like if growing the company and growth and evolution is above everything in your personal value chain, then you have to make those, hard decisions. And
yes, and sometimes it is hard decisions. Like this year, we've let go of a couple of people. One in particular, I knew that was really tight with a group of the team, and I knew that they would not fully understand why our decision was what it was. But it was in the best interest of the company and the team, because every person you hire puts the next person at risk. If they're not pulling their weight or they're not driving the company forward, then the next person's at risk, because if the company does poorly, you have to evaluate a more substantial layoff or things of that nature, right? So every person you hire is a risk, especially in the beginning, because you only have so many spots to fill. And so we made those choices. And the thing is, like, when the team sees what kind of performance we're getting now after those changes were made, whether they recognize it or not, the results of our decisions are apparent. So they were the smartest choice, even if they couldn't see it themselves. In the beginning, we've been building a really good culture within the company and team, but it was a little bit more of a family vibe. And I've started to adjust that slowly, because we are pretty tight-knit. There's about 42 people now on my team. And I expect that we will at least double next year, which is pretty good size to work with. And I want to get out of this mentality of family and, ooey gooey, all nice and give me a hug kind of feel, like, which is great to have that culture. But if you're trying to be top of your game, it's performance. I want us to think more like we're a sports team. Like we're a performance team. Like every person matters, training in, training out, day out, points, track this, data, blah, blah, blah. And if you make the cut, great. If you don't, no offense, but you're out. That kind of a thing, right? Because competition's never ending. And if you're going to level up, it's not about just, we like you, we like having you on the team, you're funny. That's great, but it's just not going to work anymore. Probably one of the biggest realizations, like personal realizations, was that I kept hitting my limit. If there was a problem in our company, in our growth, or something wasn't working, it was my fault. Like we kind of went back and talked about even before this, it was my fault. I didn't hire the right people. I didn't make the right decision. I waited too long to fire someone. And it's not always about even people. It's like, did I make the right call of when we should start hiring people? I could have started hiring people, 2 quarters ago and maybe even been even more prepared for Q4 than what we were this year. Was that a mistake? Maybe, but it was a calculation, and you look back and evaluate that and going forward, how to think about it maybe a little bit differently. But most of our growth being stunted was by me. So if you're not growing quickly, your team, your company, your revenue, it's not going to grow quickly. So you're usually the true bottleneck.
Let's define that. It's such a good point. I just want to go into kind of more detail on that. Let's define growth, how you see it, and also how do you evaluate if you hit the limit, and then how do you raise your own limit? How do you level up?
My thought process of how you define your limits or your capabilities, etc. I think if your mentality is not constantly growing, you have to be able to think bigger. That's one of the biggest lessons I've learned, is think bigger than you're thinking now. Because if you don't think bigger, how can you grow bigger? And it seems so stupid to say it like that, but the truth is yes, because I'll give you the clear example. Last Q4 2022, our biggest day of sales was $440,000. It blew my mind.
You never had,
it was my biggest day of sales. We've had prior to that, we've had 100K a day, etc., which seems, you hear those numbers sometimes pretty regularly, but 440K in one day, predominantly on a single product, for me, I'm like, what the heck? That's huge. And it changed my mind right then and there. I was like, I did not prepare this well for Q4, like I thought I did. The second thing that blew my mind was that I wasn't thinking big enough with the size and scalability of that brand. Fast forward to my lessons from that one moment to this year, our biggest day this year was $1.6 million in a single day. And then we've consistently been doing 2 or 3x what that biggest day was for most of this quarter. So instead of one day like that, majority of our quarter is huge numbers, right? And a big lesson was that I was thinking too small. And by thinking too small, I prepared too small. And by preparing too small, I stunted my own growth. So one thing is mindset. Second thing is who you associate yourself with, because the time to learn is important. And I can learn from everybody. I'm very observant, but I need to learn from people that are also aligned with a similar vision. They need to be aggressive, gritty, sharp, taking risks, balanced risks, but they also need to have something about them that I don't have. I look at friends like Marek and Joe and different guys I know, and we all have things that we're good and bad at, and I learn from them, even if it's not a direct lesson from them. I can just observe them, how they operate. Like Marek, super calculated, super thorough and deep with his thought process, right? I'm not always quite like that. I'm a little bit more boom, 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 fast, get it done, move forward, right? But you can learn both sides from both concepts and approach. And that's more of more of a philosophical side of you, basically, how you manage people. One thing I've learned is if you're not managing your people well, you're not going to grow either. So I need to be self-aware is where the point I'm getting to. Be conscious and self-aware of what you're good at, what you're not good at, but more also, what is your team and company good at and not good at? So that you have to constantly evolve. And then maybe the last thing is how do you consistently build strategic advantages? That's probably one of the key components to long-term growth, is building a moat, as they say, which seems so conceptual when you say it like that. But building a moat is things, like I said before, when it comes to the 3PL and different small nuances that take time, and the picture is not clear in the beginning. But as you evaluate things over time, that picture can become more and more and more clear. And then at some stage, you can actually start planning those out because you have a better picture of everything. But if you're not slowly progressing in that way from mindset, self-awareness, sharpening yourself with the next guy that's also sharp because you're learning things that from a high-level person, but that's strong in another way, and then strategically thinking about how do you grow the business and not just getting good at marketing, things like that.
On that, how do you learn? Like, let's say you need to learn something new, some new topic or some new thing that you're not very aware of. With the abundance of information, different resources, social media, and all of the other things, where do you go? What are your go-to sources of information, people and stuff like that?
Yeah, I don't know if I would say I have too many go-to sources. I think there's so much information. And honestly, there's so much bad information. Very little good information. You can watch tons of YouTube videos, but how can you tell if you're a newer person what is actual good information and bull? Hard to tell sometimes. So my preference is I like to kind of test a lot. I like to kind of dive into a lot, especially if it's something new I don't know a lot about. I go to as many in-person events as possible, but make sure you approach it with the trust but verify approach, meaning don't just take anyone's input and words for it. But I like to meet in person because relationships certainly in the long run have the most value if they're the right relationships. It shortens your learning curve. You build great connections and new opportunities come from that. Outside of that, a lot of times, last year or earlier this year, rather, we wanted to kind of step up our creatives and our VSL understanding. So, there's different people that you go to. Sometimes you pay for people who just have the authoritative, position already that is legit because you jump right to the top, right? It might seem expensive sometimes at first, but you're not wasting time. You get to implement it faster, which means the payoff can come faster. At the end of the day, when you meet the right people and you build a small network of the right people, if you don't know the right person, they likely do. And you can have a verified channel to someone which cuts out a lot of the noise. That's probably the best way, but it takes a little time to build your network up. But for example, there's a number of different, private Skype groups and Slack groups and stuff that I'm a part of. There's just a small number of us in each one. And we'll say, hey guys, I'm looking to do X, Y, Z because I'm trying to solve this. Do you guys have any suggestions? Any people you can connect me with, X, Y, Z? Boom. Usually there's at least one or two suggestions, right? That gets you the next step. And then you find the next step. And then you're eventually there. And that's all it takes. And then a smaller detail, in the beginning of this year, we started to build out a more detailed Amazon strategy. So we went to places like Upwork and other locations. We just hired a few different Amazon consultants. Not that I thought that they were super exceptional. I didn't know what they were. Maybe they had no knowledge really. But we hired a few. We had them audit and give us kind of their thought process, right? Why? Because I'm looking for something that they might know that I don't know. So we spent maybe $1,000 each, and maybe I learned one or two things, or maybe one or two guys proposed a reasonable strategic idea that we said, okay, we'll test that ourselves. Didn't really mind blow us, but it was maybe that one thing works. And that kind of stuff we do.
Interesting. So in many cases, it's pretty much like buying your way in or paying for information just to shortcut that, learning curve.
I think if you can afford to buy your way into the right groups and the right access of information, it's definitely one of the best ways. For example, some of my closest colleagues that I work with now and collaborate with now that we've been growing in a similar fashion the last 3 years, I connected with several of them through your group. That was my sole reason of joining your group, was strictly to go straight to, boom, an e-com networking source with high-level information. Where's the cream of the crop that I can network with? And that's what happened. It's exactly what happened. I've built maybe 8 or 10 great relationships. 3 or 4 of them I talk with almost daily.
Wow.
And we've all leveled up in a similar fashion because it goes back to what I said earlier. They're strong in one area, I'm strong in another. We exchange ideas, our teams interact, and then you all grow. It's not that I'm just going there expecting someone to spill all the beans and details. You have to add value as well. But if you want to find when you meet someone in person, it doesn't take long to usually figure out who really knows their stuff and who doesn't. You can talk to someone, ask them a few questions, and you'll know, okay, this guy, he knows something, right? About a topic, right? That guy, I want to get to know better. So what do? I either follow up with him at the same events, follow up with him afterwards, but it's just a slow build, right? It's not like overnight you become close enough to share intimate details about your businesses. But in time you will, when there's been trust established and you're adding value back and forth. And it just starts very small. And in most of my career of marketing, affiliate marketing, etc., some of my biggest, if not all of my biggest wins and advances has come from meeting and networking with the right people, indirectly or directly, for sure.
Awesome. So, Andrew in 2021, right? What things do you think Andrew didn't have that you have now?
I still lack a lot of things, to be honest. But some things is I've never been a very patient kind of person. I can be patient, but especially when it comes to when you're spending money, you want results. So I'm very results focused, especially coming from the affiliate background. I'm used to a quick turnaround. That's been something I've had to really work on heavily because especially this year, getting to the size that we're at, it takes planning, it takes preparation, it takes a little bit of believing and have confidence in both your skill set as well as the strategy you've outlined. But the patience is a big component because it's delayed gratification, right? Especially for a business that is skewed seasonal, a lot of your results come in at the end of the year. So you just have to be diligent throughout the rest of the year. But in addition to patience, that's a never-ending thing I'm working on, to be honest. It has improved. Planning. I'm not much of a planner. I'm more of a visionary for sure. I have creative ideas. I can see the path, but in terms of planning the path, it drives me nuts. And fortunately, finding someone with complementary skills that fits that gap, which is my COO, has been a tremendous boost and help for not only our company, but it's helped me. It's helped me better understand how I should be planning, how I should be thinking. So even if I don't like planning still, I still will. I've gotten better at thinking about how to plan and the way I need to be thinking about it in general. So that's still a work in progress as well. In addition to that, I think in the beginning, I was not thinking at all about how important your people are. And a lot of these statements I may keep coming back to are all around the similar things, but it's really hard to convey how important they are. But fast forward to 2023, Andrew, if I could say anything, the better people you can hire in the beginning, the faster you'll grow, the better and easier your life will be, and the more stable you'll be performance-wise. The right people who are aligned to the vision, aligned culturally, and have the right experience to be in part of the team, take you far. All you really need is one or two rock stars on your team. You can go super far with that. Everyone else can be B players. But if one or two of them are rock stars at the right levels, you can go far.
You probably know a lot of people that have not been able, from affiliate marketing background, very smart, very talented, next level marketers that have not been able to transcend and evolve to being proper business owners because they're still in that hey, I want this campaign to be profitable today, right? Mm-hmm. Or invest in the inventory, right? Or build a brand, or invest in research and development of the product, or invest or wait 2 months until the product's getting manufactured and shipped. Even in our community, there are some amazing people that coming from that background, but they still stuck in that very short-term vision for their business. And it is fascinating that you've been able to kind of transcend and evolve from there.
And that's both personal growth, but also ties back to what I said earlier about mindset. It's the mindset, because when you're used to the fast turnaround, like in affiliate marketing, it programs you essentially to be in that mindset. And it's almost like an addiction, like gambling.
Yep.
Because you put $1 in, you want to get $2 back, day one, day two max. But in this game, it's not like that. And if you're wanting to grow substantially, it's way more than just $1 in, $2 out. You have to plan, think. Like I've taken a lot of risks where throughout the first 3 quarters of the year, we survive. And then it's Q4 that brings in the bread. And that's how we plan and prepare for the next year with that understanding. And depending on your business model, every model is a little different. But the mindset of growth and thinking high level is not my issue. The issue is like the stress that it brings if you allow it to influence your decisions incorrectly. If you allow that short-term mindset to influence the decisions you make, you might find yourself just bleeding out in e-com before getting too far, because you have to plan, you have to think a little bit further ahead. Drop shipping is like the next step up from affiliate marketing because you really have low risk in general, but you can only get so far with drop shipping. If you're going to be serious and grow big numbers, especially in the 50 million plus, you'll never do that in any drop shipping model unless it's super intricate and still very complicated. But even then, I don't know anybody drop shipping at any realistically handleable structure. There are some that have 20 teams all drop shipping perhaps, but in terms of brand building and real growth, no, not happening.
You mentioned that from day one, you would hire some key players and some good people, high quality people. Even if business doesn't generate any like revenue, any profit at all, like would you still hire them from day one? Or would you try to go like and use the skill sets that you have, figure it out, get at least some product market fit, okay, this seems to be working, and then try to bring them on board?
Sure. So the approach I took was I did all the work until I had revenue coming in. We had to have some revenue. I didn't have to be super profitable, but I needed to have something working because you don't know what that time period might be. It might take you a month, 2 months, 3 months to really find something that clicks. Then once you find something that clicks, it's going for a month, going for 6 weeks. You need to start evaluating something right then. I wouldn't say that necessarily I have said that your first hire should be an operations person. But in my case, I hired a support person first for just basic customer support. I think that's okay too in that early stage. But if your intention is to really grow, the way my mindset was, I needed an operations person and I needed a marketing person. Even if the marketing person wasn't high level, I just needed someone to help me manage those areas because I have to manage the business. And what happened that first year was I hired few of the wrong people, and I ended up managing the people and not the business. And it was a challenge to go through that year. So if you have one ops person, one marketing manager to just implement what you have to do, and you oversee and guide, that at least delegates a good portion of the workload in the early days. And I think a big lesson there is that the earlier you choose to hire them, the more time you save, because if you hire them 3-6 months later, they're going to be brand new and you have to go back through and teach them all the stuff you just went through for those first 3 to 6 months. And then what? For example, we build out the Shopify store, adds sales funnels, copy, products, images, blah, blah, blah. I hired a marketing person to say, we're going to expand products. We're going to do X, Y, Z. And she's like, okay, what do I do? Or they go and do it and it's wrong. So then you have to say, oh no, I want it like this. This is how you want this step here. This is how we do our funnels. This is how you do this, right? All those steps that if you're growing fast, you don't have time for. But you have to go back through all of that if you hire later in a later time point. So I would evaluate and advise, if you can, hire as early as possible. Just hire the best you can afford to hire at the time. You need to have some revenue going though.
What will be your next business?
Well, I have 3 companies, but in terms of e-commerce business, I'm not sure. Like we are evaluating launching another brand. It's really about timing, and I don't want to step just too early until we have our processes and our team really running without me for the most part on this one here, which we're getting closer to. Over the next 6 months, I think I'll have a very clear picture, but we absolutely will take the strategy that we have and the learnings over the last 3 years and apply it to another brand that has much more scalability than even this brand.
Wow. And you will hire faster.
Yes. Right from the start, we will hire more than what I suggested. That's in the beginning if you're working with $100,000. Now that we're able to work a little bit more aggressively, like right from the start, I've learned that you need to hire from the top down. So hire your senior level managers right away across all areas of the team. So one of our big agendas next year is that we're hiring marketing director, customer success director, all these kind of supply chain manager directors, whatever title you want to give them. Basically someone that's highly experienced, highly competent, so that all of those areas of the team have 100% dedicated attention by somebody to constantly improve, identify problems, train the teams, and just kind of level it up constantly. Because if I'm only revisiting it every quarter to level it up, what would happen if someone was spending day by day every single week to level it up? How much better, faster, and bigger can you get?
Wow. Andrew, amazing conversation. I would highly recommend you guys to watch or listen. There's many nuggets throughout this conversation. And we have another conversation when you hit 100 million a year.
Yeah, let's do it.
Next year.
We're shooting for 150 next year.
Let's do it. All right. Yeah. Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you for joining me today. And
absolutely.
yeah. Thank you so much for watching and listening.
Thank you.